and oh, by the way, you incur an additional cost by a 4-pole breaker versus a 3-pole breaker. If I use 4-pole breakers and I tie all the mains and ties together, and if I do not have a differential system, then I'm subject to nuisance tripping when I don't have a fault and no tripping when I actually do have a fault. The customer has not gained anything. The other thing we said is this: as we progress into the 21st century, we are going to be operating closed transition with a variety of alternative power systems. Consequently, we will operate more closed transition in many installations than we do today. In those closed transition operations during normal activity, you will need a differential ground fault system, and a 4-pole breaker option will not service you at all. Another concern is if you're in a radial system, or excuse me, a multiple-ended system where you have 2 sources of power. For example, you have a utility-provided service and a generator-provided service. You can take those to a 4-pole transfer switch and avoid the problem with differential ground fault or the cost of installing differential ground fault protection. Yes, that is true. When using a 4-pole breaker, you switch from one utility source completely to a separately derived system, the generator. However, many transfer switches have overlapping neutrals such that they make before they break. If your overlapping neutral of your transfer switches are tied together, moving momentarily, you can nuisance strip your breakers such that you can get circulating currents that are not balanced out by a differential ground fault protection system and will nuisance strip breakers. This is why the transfer time of the switch has to be coordinated with the time delay setting of the ground fault setting of the breakers. And it must be continuously reviewed. For example, if I set a time delay setting for my ground fault breaker, either for my generator source or my utility source, and that transfer switch becomes aged, as time goes on, transfer switches are not maintained because they stay energized all of the time. The load side of the transfer switch will always be energized. The transfer switch, its operating time, the linkage time between moving from emergency to utility and utility to emergency will slow down as the linkage gets old, the insulation, or excuse me, the lubricant begins to deteriorate, becomes thick, the operating times will actually slow down. Now you may have a situation that your operating time of your switch is greater than your time delay setting of your ground fault. All of a sudden, where years before you were operating fine, now when you transfer over, you get a nuisance trip. That's because the operating times have changed of your transfer switch, and now they are slower than the pickup time of your ground fault setting. This is something where maintenance of your equipment has to come into play. And it's one of those variables that even though you solved a solution by using a transfer switch, a 4-pole transfer switch, over time it puts you back in the same position you were trying to avoid years before. Versus a differential system, you would not have that system, not have the issue. Having both breakers different